Greetings and salutations, welcome back to Capsule to Cone. I'm Matt McQueen, and today we're going to take some time out from the usual tutorial, instructional type videos that we normally do around here, and we're going to answer some of your questions. So, I hope you brought yourself a tasty beverage. I've got mine. Can't see it. There it is, Bellevue. It's the Aldi version of another fizzy water with a hint of grapefruit. I love this one. I'm actually on my third one today, and before we answer any questions, let's go ahead and answer the most important question. Yes, I am wearing the same clothes that I have worn in the last 2 or 3 videos because I'm batching episodes today. I got all the stuff set up, and I just figured, why not go ahead and make a bunch of videos before I tear all this stuff down and have a client in-house. Let's just go ahead and let's just make a bunch of vids. All right, so let's dive in and answer the first question. This is on Recording Pro Country Guitars, producing a country record from start to finish. You can watch that video up here, and it comes from Keely Harding. I'm trying to make old school country music, and all I have is an acoustic guitar and an OK mic. I really need to find the right app to use to make the music where it has fiddles, violins, basic 80s, 90s country. Which app do you prefer and what should I get? Oh yeah, I have an amp as well, a Fender. Okay, so I think this is a popular preconception that a lot of folks have, that there's just a MIDI app for every kind of instrument. And while there is, I would say that if you're trying to make 80s and 90s country, I probably wouldn't lean on some Contact library. There are some really good ones out there. I know that Impact Soundworks pedal steel sounds really, really good in the demo videos. I've never personally tried it for myself. I do have a few friends that have tried it, and I've listened to some demos that they've made with it, and I don't think that it sounds anywhere close to as good as getting a really good pedal steel player. I always hire Smith Curry for almost every pedal steel track that I've produced, for every country song that I've produced that needed pedal steel in the last 2.5 years, and Smith is he's a genius. His playing sounds great, and he's playing on all kinds of fantastic country records, and so I think that that would be my advice to you. Just speaking from personal experience, I would try to, as I'm writing songs and coming up with the parts for the songs, I would probably use MIDI for that, just because you're trying to figure things out, especially if these are your own songs and there's no budget for that sort of thing to just pay an endless amount of players. But I think if I'm working on something for a client, there has to be budget there, and you want to be able to throw that budget at a real player to get a really, really good result. And there are tons of session players out there that you can hire that will do stuff remotely. You never have to even have them into your studio, and that has served me well because my studio is 300 something miles from Nashville and 60 miles from Knoxville. I'm up in the mountains, it's an old church, and so that is what I have always had to lean on to be able to get great sounding tracks for the clients that I'm working with, and that is probably the route that I would go with. Now, like I said, if you're doing some kind of demo work and you're trying to just come up with the parts, you want to write them all together, there's definitely nothing wrong with using those tools that are out there and using different Contact players. I'd probably just lean on that. I'd probably try to find something like Impact Soundworks to put into my song that sounds like the instrument that you're going with, and write the part that way. All right, next question. This is on Battle Royale with vintage Marshall amps, and in this video we did a shootout between a JMP 50 from 1972, a Super Lead from 1974, and a JCM 800 from 1986, and we sort of played the same riff through all of them and used the same 70s Marshall cab. The question from Herky O'Jerky. I like that, what a good name. Thanks guys, I had a question. I have blackbacks and greenbacks and just did the same thing, but I X patterned the speakers. What's the difference between the X pattern and how you loaded the blackbacks on the bottom and the greenbacks on the top? Thanks, gents. Okay, so this question, honestly, it doesn't apply to us a whole lot. In that video, we had the different Marshalls running through the cabinet, and we did a couple of different miking scenarios with the top speakers and the bottom speakers, and the blackbacks are on the bottom, those are vintage, and the greenbacks that are on top, those are just reissues or reproductions, and I think those ones are actually probably from the mid-90s, so they've got some age on them too. The greenbacks sound really good. I love that speaker. The blackbacks, they're real dark. I don't like it as much, but it can be cool for a thing. I don't use those as much as I like to use the greenbacks because I feel like I get more of what I need on the top end. To answer your question, with the difference between them being top and bottom like we have and X patterned like what you did in your cabinet, to be perfectly honest, that's Goldman's cab. I didn't put the speakers in there. They've just always been like that, and so I just learned where they were and used them accordingly. If you're playing on stage or in a room, you know, I think the theory behind having the speakers be in an X pattern is that it sort of evens out the differences between the top and bottom. You know, you've got your greenbacks and you've got your blackbacks, and so it's all coming at you sort of, you know, top and bottom. It's kind of spreading it out. In my application, it doesn't really matter because I'm usually, even if I'm miking two speakers, I've got the microphones on each speaker, you know, and I'm summing them down to one track or something in Pro Tools. And so for my application, it doesn't really matter where the speakers are at in the cab. And I've even been thinking of building a cab that has 4 different speakers in it all wired up so that I can just have one cab and I can try different speakers without having to change the speaker cable to the amp. And then, you know, I'd be able to get different sounds, you know, more readily without having to rewire. So as far as that goes, you know, I don't really know. Nobody's ever told me. I've never really thought to discover what the difference is if it makes a difference sonically in the room. I think probably once you get so far away from the cabinet, you're not really going to notice that big of a difference. And I would say that the reason that they're X pattern is probably just, you know, to try to spread that out a little bit and make it a little bit more even when it does hit you if you're 15 or 20 feet away. But I can't imagine that you would be able to notice an actual difference much further than 10 or 15 feet that would be super noticeable. All right, question number 3. This comes from Mixing a Classic Country Song from Start to Finish Part 1. Again, you can watch that video by clicking the link up there in the card. The question from Kitty Fisher is, I'm curious about Sonarkworks. I've heard some good things about it, but the reviews, they always seem sponsored. Did you find it helpful? I'm working in a small room during COVID, and even with some panels up, the bass is still an issue as you would expect. So yeah, I've been using Sonarkworks in smaller rooms. I don't actually use it in this room. I don't really know why. I just sort of got used to the way this room sounds. We have the diffuser panel, big curved white diffuser panel over there that's made out of pegboard with insulation behind it, and I sort of just got used to the way this room sounds and the way my speakers sound in it, and I never really wanted to put Sonarkworks in here, although maybe it would be beneficial, maybe I should put it in here. I've always used it in the B room that's at the other end of the studio, and I used it at home during COVID when I moved my rig home. And yeah, I really like it. I've been using Sonarkworks now for probably 5 or 6 years, and ever since I first got it, I thought that it was beneficial and I thought that it helped me to hear things better. It's not an all-in-one solution though. You know, you still have to consider room acoustics even when you are compensating for what the room is doing naturally, and I think that probably Sonarkworks isn't enough on its own. I really am a firm believer in listening to reference mixes. I don't always listen to them just inside of my Pro Tools session or go through the trouble of importing that, but I take a lot of breaks while I'm mixing and will oftentimes pull up Spotify and listen to songs that are in a similar genre, you know, to kind of give me an ear break from what I've been mixing, and then, you know, automatically just go right back into Pro Tools and listen to the song that I'm mixing. And I think that that can help you to get a better sense of what, you know, what a pro mix, or what something that's done really well, mixed really well, mastered really well sounds like in your room and in your speakers, and you can, you know, really dive into your mix and compare what you're hearing to in your session to what is out there that's been released into the world. And so I think that Sonarkworks is part of the puzzle, but listening to reference mixes sort of gives you a better picture all the way around so that you can make sure that you're hearing what you need to hear. All right, question number 4. This is from Will It Les Paul, episode 3, 2009, Gibson Trini Lopez. You can check it out up there versus the 1980 Les Paul Standard. Will you sell that Trini? I've got a 15 Memphis Trini, but I love the 09 Custom Shops way more. No, is actually the answer to that question. I will not sell it. I love this guitar. This is the guitar that he is talking about. I've not had it very long. I actually had it 4 years ago, sold it to my friend Mark. I bought it at a pawn shop in Knoxville for way less than it was worth, and It was at a time when I needed money more than I needed guitars, and so I flipped it, sold it to my friend Mark, made about $800 selling the guitar, and then he had it for 4 years, and I had a few guitars that I sold, and I'd done a few records, and I got paid for it all at once, and I decided it was time to buy a semi-hollow guitar, and so I was talking to Mark about it, and he said, I'll sell you that Trini back, and I'll sell it to you for exactly what you sold it to me for. So I ended up getting it back this past summer, and have used it on a bunch of stuff, and it's really cool. It's one of my favorites. It's really pretty. It's 2009. It's got 57 classics in it, and I'm a big Foo Fighters fan. And so, yeah, I really wanted this guitar. It's sort of like the red one that Dave used in the early days of the Foo Fighters, and he says that he used this, not this one, but he used, his is a 67, and he says he used that Trini Lopez on basically every Foo Fighters record ever. I mean, I'm sure he's still using it to this day. So that quote was from probably 4 or 5 years ago. So at that time, we would have been at like Wasting Light or something. Gosh, no, Wasting Light was 8 years ago. But I think it was from about the time that Wasting Light came out, and he said he's used his Trini Lopez on all of the Foo Fighters records up to that point. So I'm a big fan of the Foos and a big fan of Gibson guitars, and so it just made sense that I should have a Trini in my arsenal. This comes from the video Yamaha M1516 Console Modification Build and Mod Recording Studio Gear Part 1, which is actually a video series that I maybe will continue, but it'll be on this M1532. I bought an M1516 and I should have done a follow-up video. Never really got the chance to do it, but it was sort of a catastrophe. Right after I finished filming that video and I finished opening up the packaging and getting everything spread out, I noticed that the console was damaged, and it took me honestly 4 months to get UPS to pay me for the damage that was done to the console, and I had to leave it just sitting here in the studio. I had to save all the packaging. It was super annoying because it was in the way, and so I never filmed a second video because I couldn't work on the console and modify it in case if UPS sent anybody out to inspect it, which they never did, even though they called me and told me that they were going to try to send somebody out. And yeah, so part 2 of that video never happened, which does not actually answer the question. The question is, where did you get those circuit boards to mod the EQ? So you can go and check that video out up here, and the circuit boards that he's referring to are these babies right here that I populated. I did not make these circuit boards though. This comes from my friend, whoa! This comes from my friend Chris Mitchell. Almost dropped it. This comes from my friend Chris Mitchell, and I'll link to his blog down below. Chris is an amazing tech. He's also a great front of house engineer. He works for Humphreys McGee. He's a super cool guy, and he has guided me through a lot of the process of modding this console, which has the first 16 channels have this very EQ in it. And there was also a bunch of stuff that Goldman did before we even moved this console in here, recapping it and adding direct outs, and there's cinematic transformers on the direct outputs, and then there's also a modded power supply, and so Chris has been super helpful, and this is his design, and these EQs are an all inductor based design and are very reminiscent, I guess, of, which is the one that's not the graphic EQ? I think it's the API 550. It might be the 560. I'm pretty sure it's the 550 though. I always get confused. And that makes the EQs in this desk very similar to that, which is really cool because this desk is transformer based inputs on all the preamps. It's got a big op amp in there. And then when you take the Yamaha EQs out and you add this one, it's sort of like we added 16 channels of really nice inductor-based EQ, sort of along the lines of an API to all 16 of those channels, and it's just very musical. It doesn't sound weird, it doesn't sound goofy, and when you're tracking, we EQ on the way into Pro Tools with this desk and are capturing the sounds EQ'd as they're going in, and they just are always really good sounding. And so that is where I got those EQs, and you can go to the link below, Flying Eye Pro. It's Chris's WordPress blog, and he's got a couple of different articles that he's written about different Yamahas that he's modded, and you can also contact him through his website and order yourself these EQs if you're trying to mod your own Yamaha console, which is a great platform for something that you might want to mod and use for recording. That is all the questions. Thank you for asking, guys. Thanks for watching the channel. It really means a lot to us. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, leave them below on this video or other videos. If you watch them, that really helps us out and encourages us to keep doing what we're doing. I've been Matt. This is Capsule to Cone. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up if you like it, and hit the bell notification so you know when the next video is coming out, and I will see you on the next video.